A letter from a mental health provider can be key to winning your asylum case and to getting your asylum interview scheduled on an expedited basis. But it's not immediately clear to most asylum seekers how to go about seeking such a letter, or how to explain to a mental health provider what kind of information should actually go in the letter. Don't worry, I've got your back. In this video, I'm going to tell you why a letter from a mental health provider can be helpful in your asylum case, and I'll give you tips for ensuring that the letter is as effective as possible. I'm Brian Manning, and I used to be an asylum officer with the government, but now, as an asylum lawyer, I help immigrants all over the country to secure their future in America through asylum. Let me know in the comments if you've got an asylum case pending or are considering applying. I'd especially like to hear from you if you've been waiting for an asylum interview for multiple years. All right, first, under what circumstances can a letter from a mental health provider help you in your asylum journey? If you're awaiting an interview with USCIS and you want to get that interview scheduled so that you can win asylum and get on with your life, well, you can ask the government to expedite your case on what are called urgent humanitarian grounds. If you're facing some very serious hardship that could be alleviated by having your case adjudicated, then USCIS might agree to schedule your interview soon. They may let you cut in line, basically. And mental health challenges such as depression can count as an urgent humanitarian matter, justifying expediting your case. When you ask for your case to be expedited for this reason, well, you need to provide proof. And yes, you should detail in a statement that you yourself write what you're going through, but it's also essential to have a licensed mental health professional make an assessment and to include that assessment in your expedite request, to have them write a letter for you. A letter along these lines is also helpful in trying to actually win your case, where you're arguing that what you endured in your country in the past is so serious that the harm rises to the level of persecution, as that word is understood in the context of US asylum laws. Enduring psychological harm is a factor that the asylum officer or judge will take into account in deciding whether the past harm in your case is sufficiently severe to count as persecution, which can be key to winning your case. So it can be powerful to have an assessment from a professional that details just how severely what you've been through has continued to affect you. You would submit this to the asylum office or the immigration court at the same time that you submit evidence for your case. By the way, if you want to maximize your chances for asylum success, then please hit the subscribe button and the bell notification so that you don't miss the insights that I share on this channel. All right, let's turn now to some specifics of how to get a letter from a mental health provider that can help you get your asylum interview expedited and help you win your case. First, what do I mean when I say mental health provider? Like, who should be writing this letter for you? Well, they need to be a licensed provider of health services. This can include a psychologist, which is kind of like a psychiatrist, but they don't have a medical degree and instead have a doctorate degree. You could also see a licensed clinical social worker, a licensed professional counselor, or a marriage and family therapist. Make sure they do have some kind of license and that they include in the letter discussion of their credentials, i.e. how they're qualified to make the kind of assessment that they're making for you. Now, how do you find this person? Well, start by asking around in your community. You may be able to find recommendations for someone who speaks your language and is familiar with your culture, which can be good. And you can also simply Google for therapists in your area, or try calling a university or hospital psychiatry or psychology department and ask for recommendations. Let me pause here to say that I am not recommending that you seek out a mental health provider just for the purpose of getting a letter for your asylum case. I think that pretty much everyone can benefit from some therapy or counseling, and I know that most asylum seekers are struggling in dealing with emotional or psychological trauma, and they could probably benefit from talking to someone about it. So I hope that you'll consider seeing a professional first and foremost to get the support that you need. And you can then get the added benefit of them possibly helping with your asylum case. Okay, how long should you see a mental health professional before asking them to write something for your asylum case? Well, I'd say that at least several months after several meetings with them is ideal. Sometimes people see a mental health professional just once, pretty much just so they can get a letter from them. This is not ideal. It may look to the asylum officer or judge like you went to them just for your immigration case. Speaking of which, I recommend against going to someone whose branding and website or other materials indicate that they focus on providing assessments for immigration cases. This is kind of a red flag for asylum officers and judges who may view your dealings with the provider as inauthentic. It doesn't create a great impression. Okay, let's discuss what should go in the letter other than the author's qualifications, which we already touched on. Well, for starters, they need to say how many times they've seen you and what the dates of those meetings were. And then they need to provide their clinical impressions, or in other words, what are their conclusions about your mental state? In their professional opinion, are you clinically depressed, for example, or is there perhaps some other diagnosis? It's helpful if, beyond the diagnosis, they relate details about how you're suffering or how your psychological challenges are impacting you. For example, if you told them that you suffer from nightmares almost every night in which your persecutors are dragging you out of your house, well, the letter should say this. Did you tell your counselor about the debilitating fear that overwhelms you when you see a police officer on the street because it reminds you of what the police did to you in your own country? Well, that should go in the letter. For letters that will be used in support of a request to expedite your asylum case with USCIS, it's important that the author state that it is, in their professional opinion, likely that your condition would improve if you were to get your immigration situation sorted. It's good if the author can faithfully say that at least part of the problem is the uncertainty that you're facing regarding your ability to stay in the United States and the prospect of possibly having to return to your own country. If having the interview hanging over you is stressing you out and contributing to your poor mental condition and getting it behind you would likely be good for you, well, then the letter should say as much. If they do formal tests on you, then they should include a copy of the results. Now, a mental health professional who has written this kind of letter before should more or less know what should go in your letter, but it may take some discussion and some back and forth with them to ensure that it hits the key points that we've covered in this video. So you should be prepared to be proactive in managing the development of this letter. If you're ready to take the next step and get help with your asylum case, then call my office today. That number is 713-909-0401. Remember, we help people all over the country, so it doesn't matter where you live. Call us now to schedule an asylum strategy session so that we can help you secure your future in America through asylum. Again, I'm Brian Manning, and it's a pleasure and an honor to serve you in your asylum journey.